Good evening, spiritual warriors. Welcome to another program of spiritual warriorship, where we read and discuss and are studying books by His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami. And as you know, there's 6 spiritual warrior books and many others, Reflections and Beggar. I'm sorry I wasn't here last week. I hope you weren't overly upset by me not being here. But a sadhu was in town, and hearing from sadhus is really an important part of our spiritual life. But I also felt that what we have been hearing and hopefully reading, again, these books of Bhakti Tirtha Swami can be purchased from the Krishna.com store or from harinampress.org. And as I say, on that website you can get excerpts, read excerpts, see the front cover, the back cover, and even get an excerpt of what's in there. And they were giving away something free if you went to the website. So do try to begin collecting these books of Bhakti Tirtha Swami if you're finding them interesting as we read. And the other thing, I've been asking questions as I've begun, but to really think, if you've been hearing, how or are you able to apply any of what you've been hearing in your everyday life? Does any of it become practical for you to even desire to try and maybe think about it and try? And of course, I've also asked if you have moved in that direction and you've noticed any changes in your consciousness, your environment, your exchanges with people, and would like to share. I would like to hear, of course. And if you don't want to share on the chat room, I've also said you can write to me at motherindrani108@gmail.com. Okay? So, we are in chapter 8. I have been, of Spiritual Warrior 3. Oh, something else came to me today. I put this out at the last time, that right now there's 58 episodes on the archives of Spiritual Warriorship. You can see them if you go to Krishna.com TV and then click on Spiritual Warriorship, and you can go back and see what's been done, or look for what, if you're new, haven't heard, or review. Which brings me to the point that I thought today I'd like to ask for help. I mentioned it before, and this is how it came to me. I do not have the programs listed by book and chapter. And I was thinking that it would be good if there was a way for someone, and today I thought not just one someone, but if maybe a number of you took 5 episodes or 10 episodes and go to it and put the, I don't know if the date, but just the number of the episode, the book, chapter, what I spoke about. I don't know. That came to me. Think on it. And if there are any volunteers, we can talk more. So here we are, and when I left you the last time, I had reached the section that we were to go to next, called The Dark Night of the Soul. And I felt up to that we had really covered a lot. So what I want to do in the next few minutes is just review briefly the sections we've been through. If you've been following us, maybe you have notes, or maybe you'll recall a section and something that inspired you, something that encouraged you, something that enthused you, or something that bored you. But we'll go through there to get to where we want to start tonight. And I know I had also been asking questions a few times and asking for you to respond if you so wish. So far, I haven't gotten any response. Okay, I still have questions. But let's see how we do this review. And as I say, I know I'm on camera, and I try to give you my eye-to-eye contact, but I also have notes that I can't keep everything in this old brain. So let's begin. This chapter was entitled, How to Strengthen Ourselves. And I remember choosing this chapter because the previous chapter was how spiritual warriors view of the world. And also I realized that you all, many of you out there, are reading some kind of spiritual book. If you are studying Hare Krishna books, you're into Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charanamrita. If you're reading a Bible, a Quran, whatever. But it's been my experience when we read these kinds of books, we get a desire to really begin to practice what's there, or else it seems a little overwhelming. And that's why this title of this particular, How to Strengthen Ourselves, Bhakti Tirtha Swami gives us tools, technologies, for some understanding for your spiritual life. If you're feeling you really want to go more, higher, advance more, and yet maybe having some difficulty. And what is the first thing? What was my first question? His first section is called Spiritual Life is Challenging. And the question is, why? Why are there challenges? Excuse me. Why are there challenges in spiritual life? I'm waiting. I love the classroom effect, put a hand up. I was on a conference call one Saturday morning, and they have a way for those who want to, it says to ask, raise your hand, press *5. But I guess I can't ask you to press *5 online. But think about these questions if you've been hearing us, if you have answers. Why are there challenges in spiritual life? Okay, we went through that. Do you remember? Anybody remember? One of the things he had stated is really to determine how well we absorbed the knowledge and what we've been studying and how we can apply it in our life. Right? Good answer. The next question, what was it? Okay. We went to Spiritual Life is Challenging. And then we went to great teachers were tested also, because it's really not for you to think that, oh, poor me, I'm being tested and I really want this. But he gave examples. Even if you study Bible or read Bible, Jesus was tested and he had to really turn away that temptation. and other saints were also faced with severe difficulties. And if you're reading Srimad Bhagavatam and hearing how some of the acharyas went through, but what Bhaktitirtha Swami tells us, that these experiences that we're reading about and hearing about is to let us know what we can expect, that spiritual life is serious, and yet there will be challenges. And usually those challenges, again, as I just said, is to determine if you've absorbed your studies and what the teachers or gurus have said. And it's also, he has said, to see if we're qualified to go back to the spiritual world. And then the section which I found most interesting, working on our own consciousness. It's like, it's time during spiritual to stop pointing fingers, your fault, your fault, your fault. We have to look at ourselves. We have to look at our own consciousness. And in that section, he tells us how important it is to be selfless. If we wish to serve others, what must we do first? Anybody remember that? He told us we must do serious self-inventory. Why? So that we can root out the obstacles that will prevent us from being open and having the qualities that we mentioned of a spiritual warrior, loving companion, compassionate and faithful. And if we do self-inventory, we're honest with ourselves, and we see what the obstacles are, and we've been giving you the tools of how to move them, then you can advance in your spiritual life. We also looked at weeding out the saboteurs of devotion. Because say you do your inventory, you clean, you begin cleaning out those obstacles. And to even clarify that for us, he gave the example of Lord Chaitanya cleaning the Gandicha temple, if you've been following with that, and how many times they've washed and cleaned and swept, and he himself, Lord Chaitanya, went in for final cleaning, if you will, another cleaning, and found little grains, and they put that all together. So these are the subtle impurities within ourselves. That's what that's an example of. So we have to continually do self-inventory, find the obstacles, work on removing them, purifying ourselves so that we can. So we have to really examine ourselves more deeply so that we can find the hidden kinds of dirt that can what? Cause serious difficulties in our spiritual life. And in this way, as I said before, it's not about pointing to somebody else's fault. We have to start with looking inside. And then in weeding out our saboteurs, he told us what, and I like this, he says, an impartial, investigative attitude is vital for all spiritual warriors. Why? Because subtle interferences can arise at any moment to pull us away from the path of right action. Okay. Now, when I say subtle interferences, you know, we know the subtle stuff. You say to somebody, I was talking to so-and-so, but subtly I picked up da-da-da-da, something. So it's really something that's not immediately obvious or noticeable, but you know something is going on there. What was the next question? let me, any of this sounding familiar to you? I don't know how many of you are there, but how many have been following. But are you remembering and kind of grasping this and feeling this? Because I do want to get to our subject for tonight. Any questions at the moment?
Bhakti Carol doesn't remember us discussing as why we're tested.
I can't hear you.
Bhakti Carol doesn't remember why we are tested and things. And she doesn't have any questions.
She doesn't have a question, but she doesn't remember. Okay, I thought I gave the answer on why we were tested. To determine what? If we have absorbed the knowledge. If we have absorbed what we're studying spiritually. And to see if we've applied it in our lives. Because if you're reading bona fide sastras and you have a bona fide teacher and you apply those teachings, you will see change. And you will know you can pass that particular test. That's one of the reasons. And the other reason he had given us, it's to see if we're qualified for advancing and eventually going back to the spiritual world. Okay? Now, we had, where were we? We talked about, we talked about weeding out the saboteurs. And what he tells us there is that we cannot understand spiritual reality by scholarship alone. Study is important. The path to spiritual realization is through dedicated, selfless service. Now, as we offer service to others with no expectation of reward, the Lord in the heart becomes more available to us and provides for our needs. Why? Because we have removed the veils that hide the truth. It goes back to the consciousness self-inventory, seeing what's there, cleaning it out. He's taking us right along. And then he tells us about self-purification. What's the question for self-purification? Where does the greatest protection come from? Where does the greatest protection come from? I'm sure you all know that. I'm quiet, waiting for your answer. Okay, I hope you're meditating kind of on this. Because the greatest protection of all comes from our unconditional, unmotivated, uninterrupted devotional service. See how service is important. Service to the Lord, service to others. And as he said before, service without expecting any rewards. Huh? Okay, this is all, we've all been through this. So, he reminds us that as spiritual warriors, we must not forget the help we are constantly receiving from higher beings in the universe. Then we looked at the value of discernment. Remember that? Spiritual warriors, he told us there, must understand that the root causes of destructive behavior can generally be traced back to lust or the desire for sense gratification. Okay? And he reminds us that as spiritual warriors, we must not allow the herd mentality to capture us. Instead, we must keep ourselves apart, ready to lead the herd as a result of our purity and commitment. Spiritual warriorship is a powerful position to be in. And then we looked at normal is not normal. Remember? We must resist the temptation to be normal. Remember? Because those who are now considered normal and accept the values and practices of an insane world. Okay? And it's all about, and normal now means how much you can accumulate. And the one who dies with the most toys wins. Remember, he told us that. So we should continually, constantly examine the ramifications of our thoughts and actions and seek to discover the laws behind them. And ultimately, we will learn who is the law maker and how to be in harmony with his law. Okay? So normal is not natural. We're on a spiritual warrior path. Okay, then what did we look at? Okay, we looked at discernment and then sound vibrations. Remember that? That's another aspect of our environment that requires careful discernment is sound, because we're out there every day, we're exchanging, speaking. But he states who we talk with, what we talk about, and what we hear. Even if we're not aware of it, sound vibrations have a powerful effect on us. And he tells us if we engage in frivolous, speculative, or gossipy conversation, we weaken our vital energy and interfere with our spiritual development. Now, such behavior causes us to become off balance and consequently makes us more open to attack. And in that perspective, don't be afraid to be quiet. If you are at work or in the school cafeteria and you're with so-called friends and they get into this gossipy conversation of frivolous things, and if you're on a spiritual path, if you're a spiritual warrior endeavoring to strengthen yourself, after a while that frivolous stuff is of no interest to you. The gossipy stuff is of no interest to you because you're beginning to get a sense of who you really are, the meaning of life, and what's going on, and how temporary things are, and how there is a higher consciousness and a higher path to get to. So if that happens, you can very nicely excuse yourself. Or if you happen to be in an environment, what I've done, I just start chanting in my head and try not to listen if I can't move away from it. And then you begin to hear the holy name in place of what's going on out there. So we have to realize that there are many things that can interfere with our moving ahead and advancing. And as I said, now he's telling us that sound vibrations can do that. Okay, now we're going to move into Dark Night of the Soul. Now say you've been following this process, just the steps and techniques, technologies he's mentioned up to this point for your advancing spiritually. And I hope you, if you don't have notes, you remember. Because then he says, in our growth process, we must be prepared for what is called the dark night of the soul. This can be a very challenging period. This is a time of danger and opportunity. Now the danger is that we may succumb to defeat and despair. And the opportunity is that we are receiving an unprecedented chance to put many old destructive patterns behind us. I feel to repeat that. Because if you're on a spiritual path, if you're reading Bhagavad Gita, if you're chanting the holy name, and if you're hearing these points of obstruction and ways to get past it, you're disturbing a lot of stuff that's been there maybe for lifetimes. And even getting the mind to function at a different level. And as we've said, the mind does not like change. And some of these things have been setting in our consciousness for a long time. And here we are, rooting them out. Yeah, actually digging them out and looking at them so we can be done with them and move ahead and reach higher levels of consciousness and reach the joy of knowing, having a sense of who we are, who God is, and our relationship with Him, and begin serving others and not being so into ourselves. You know, I am the center. No, Krishna's the center. God is the center. And with Him at the center, as I serve others, He reciprocates. So He tells us that this period that is can be a part of our growth process, is a time of danger and opportunity. And what is the danger? The danger is that we may succumb to defeat and despair. And what is the opportunity? He's always telling us about good opportunities, right? The opportunity is that we are receiving an unprecedented chance to put many old, destructive patterns behind us. And isn't that what spiritual life is about? The dark night of the soul offers us the possibility of attaining genuine self-realization. And that's liberation from the painful cycle of birth and death. I remember when I heard at a lecture in my early days, they were reading from Prabhupada, and he said, you can end the cycle of births and death this lifetime. I remember the tears rolled, and I got to stay with this. But he tells us, Bhakti Tirtha Swami, yet, with all that it offers, it is truly a dark night, often accompanied by devastating feelings of loss or an acute sense of loneliness. We are likely to feel totally misunderstood, unappreciated, and unloved. And we may experience profound separation from everyone and everything we have held dear. Quite simply, this is because to fully gain ourselves, we must first lose ourselves. And you may be thinking, well, why would I want to go through that? What is she talking about? What is he talking about? You've built me up, you've encouraged me to go along with the spiritual life, do inside search inventory, and now you're telling me I can go through this. But he tells us it's because to fully gain ourselves, we must first lose ourselves. And I'll tell you, reading this, I remember when I did go through that stage in my early days with this teaching. And I didn't quite understand it. Thank God for Bhakti Tirtha Swami and hearing his classes and lectures. But I remember one time I was just crying. Everything made me cry, and I would cry, and I'd go to my room and crying. And was excited about what I was hearing in the philosophy, and I had a desire to want to apply it in my life. But what happened at some point, I got a sense, and it could be the Lord in the heart feeling sorry for me, or recognizing what was going on, that the tears meant something was changing within my mind and consciousness. And I'll go on because he tells us here what happens. He says in the Christian tradition, St. John explains that as the light dawns and the higher law begins to act, it stirs up our fears and it throws us off balance, even to the point of sinking into a profound depression. We may question whether God himself has completely forgotten us. And I hope you're hearing this, because you're spiritual warriors out there. Many of you have been coming back week after week. Maybe one or two of you, or some of you are new tonight, but you're on a spiritual path, because I don't think you would be on Krishna.com live tonight if you aren't on a spiritual path, you aren't reading spiritual books of some kind or chanting. And that is the process that begins disrupting the obstacles. And this is how they have been so attached to us that we go through. So it's good to hear. If you're going through this or have been going through this, it's not unusual. It happens. And it's happening for a reason. He says to us, we may question whether God himself has completely forgotten us. During this period, all of our secret, long-held desires and fears must appear before us so that we can transcend them. How are you going to put in new? What I think in the Bible it says you can't put new wine in an old keg or something. And here we're hearing, as we read, Lord Chaitanya cleaning that temple, which is symbolic, and he kept cleaning and cleaning and cleaning to the last grain of sand. Where did we read? You can't. You have to lose yourself. You have to get rid of that old stuff so you can replace new. Now, this he says, seasoned spiritual warriors meet this challenge with a smile and remain happy. If you've been studying and hearing and chanting, you'll know what's going on and be happy for it. It's moving, it's clearing out. First of all, we are secure in the knowledge that the Supreme will not give us more than we can bear when handled. And secondly, if the situation is becoming truly unbearable, we can persevere in the certainty that a positive change is just around the corner. And I remember reaching that point of knowing some change is going on with me right now. And as I can move through this, it will be worth it. And my dear, it was. But I remember the pain and agony and the tears. But I guess because I was really committed and serious about wanting a spiritual life. I was able to hang in there, if you will. Perseveres, he says. And changes did come. Now he tells us that the beautiful aspect of the dark night of the soul is that as we penetrate all the layers of selfishness and suffering and begin to release our old negative patterns, you see, we finally become the vibrant person that we really are. And we are vibrant. We're really, our souls are eternal. We're spirit souls, Satchitananda, knowledgeable, blissful, eternal. And that's who we really are. But that can't produce itself, manifest itself until what? We release our old negative patterns. And it may not, I keep repeating, and you know yourself, that it doesn't have to be just this lifetime. We've all come with patterns from lifetimes after lifetime. But isn't it wonderful, this lifetime, we're getting this information. We're getting these tools. We're getting, give thanks for Srila Prabhupada for coming and bringing us this ancient Vedic knowledge and dispensing it to us and writing the books that we can read and study. And then I give thanks to Bhakti Tirtha Swami for clearing it for us my dull head, to realize what is going on. And when you see, once you hear what the possibility of a thing happening and how it happens, and these are the steps, and it feels like this and it looks like this, but you don't have to be fearful because this is what's happening. Once you know what's happening, you can keep going, no matter how it may seem pretty hard. And that's the wonderful thing about spiritual life and about the spiritual warriorship. What follows the dark night of the soul is a high level of attainment accompanied by an abiding experience of profound joy. To reach that level, though, we must remove the countless layers of dirt encasing our heart and consciously choose to ally ourselves with the forces of goodness and transcendence. How do you like that information? Did it click? Are you going to take this and continue striving for spiritual growth and advancement? Any questions, any comments, any discussion on this particular aspect of this chapter on how to strengthen yourself? Remember, this chapter is called How to Strengthen Ourselves. And the book subtitle is called Solace for the Heart in Difficult Times. Doesn't that fit in? Isn't he giving it to us? Difficult times, what's going on? He gives us a step to working on our own consciousness, doing inventory, being discerning, watch the sounds that we're listening to, watch what we're thinking and speaking, and get away. You see what I'm saying? The things that will block us advancing in spiritual life and becoming, I like Prabhupada's expression, fully Krishna conscious, fully God conscious. Any questions? Any comments? How many people were? Any people in the chat room?
Two.
Two? Who?
Bhuvan Mohan and Bhakta Patrick.
Oh, there was two others before they left?
Yeah.
Okay. I worked myself into that dark night of the soul. It's so important. I hope others who may not be in the chat room are taking this and realizing what an opportunity we're being given in hearing how to advance spiritually. Okay, no questions, no comments. All right, I'll continue. So eventually we'll finish this chapter, but I just feel that there's so many informative points being made by His Holiness Bhakti-tirtha Swami. He tells us that as spiritual warriors we must be especially vigilant about choosing our spiritual path. We should accept things favorable to devotional service and reject things that are unfavorable. Now, many of us have a problem deciding what is favorable or unfavorable. We have so many choices. In our local holistic newspaper, for example, what was in Washington, Pathways or something. Here there's one called Awakening. There are pages and pages of advertising of astrologers, massage therapists, acupuncturists, and so on. We can find almost anything we want. It's wonderful to see so many people going beyond orthodox traditional methods and frames of reference, but it can be dangerous also, because wherever there is spiritual potency, there's also the opportunity to fall prey to negative energies. So again, he's telling us to be vigilant. It's been mentioned a few times in here. So spiritual life is not a sit back, twiddle the thumbs, okay, I'll wait on Krishna to bring this. It's being vigilant, conscious, mindful, alert, and aware. And using the tools, technologies being given to help you to see, this was what he was talking about. I remember hearing this on that spiritual warrior class. That's what it is. Okay, I'll be vigilant, I'll be attentive, I'll discern, I'll make a choice, proper choice here. You see how this can help you if you're being attentive. He says that many of us have a problem deciding, but we should recognize that guidance received from channeling and similar activity is not necessarily wise or spiritual. We must look at the life of the channeler and remember that God is not so weak or desperate that he will transmit his message through someone who lives an impure life. We must always evaluate the message carrier and quality of the message. We must be at least as careful as we are when we go shopping. When we shop, usually we know what we're looking for and evaluate our purchases, don't we? Carefully. Especially in the marketplace, you're looking, if it's bruised, you don't want it, huh? If it looks tired, wilted, you don't want it. So he says the same is true in the spiritual marketplace. If the situation can genuinely help us in developing love of God, then it is appropriate. But we must first be sure, through vigilant observation, that the person or group actually has what we are looking for and is not just giving up lip service to attract giving us lip service to attractive ideas and slogans. And that takes me back to, again, before I came to hear about Krishna consciousness. In my spiritual search, I realized I've been searching for many years, and joined different groups, different organizations, and with some spiritual. At that time, I wasn't quite sure what spiritual meant, but it wasn't the main mundane, everyday thing. And I would get involved. It was always, during the 60s, 70s, peace and love. And everybody was more or less mode of goodness, now I understand. But at some point, I remember I would hear from some place within me, there's more. It's amazing. The Lord in the heart is always there, knowing what it is you need. And I would hear this and just sort of, look around. I guess I was being vigilant at the time. I didn't know completely about developing love of God, but I knew I wanted to know about God. And eventually I would move on to another group or organization who may be doing a little bit more, maybe meditation now with the peace and love. And I would begin meditating or whatever, and again I would hear there's more. So we are really being taken care of, because I just kept going and going, and I realized each thing was like a stepping stone until I feel Krishna just dumped me at the feet of Bhakti Tirtha Swami to help me to finally open my eyes and with the torchlight of knowledge. So we must be vigilant. We all have free will. And because we are in a world at war, we must make our choices with care. Negative forces will tempt us at every turn and use a variety of subtle approaches to neutralize our potency. That is why self-observation, vigilance, and purification are so important. And we've used those words many times tonight. She tells us we should choose a bona fide tradition and go deeply into it. If it is properly bona fide, it will naturally help us appreciate other genuine traditions. But if it is not deep, it will make us more self-righteous and sectarian, because we will feel that we have the only answer. However, even worse than sectarianism is the refusal to accept any rules, regulations, or authority about what is proper. And we know, maybe if you've been out there and seeking, there's some groups who are, do whatever you want. You're a free soul and a free spirit. However, even worse than sectarianism is the refusal to accept rules, regulations, and authority about what is proper. That's why I think I heard in some earlier days, some folks just, when Prabhupada set down rules and regulations, they didn't want to be around, especially no meat eating, and no illicit sex. What do you do for fun? I heard somebody ask once. But if the absolute truth does exist, then a bona fide tradition will transmit it directly, without watering it down to make it acceptable to those who are not serious. That's why we have what? Bhagavad Gita as it is. Bhakti Tirtha Swami gave it to us straight. So when we start relying on our own ideas, we get into trouble. And then Maya laughs at us. What does she say? Oh, you're going to try to defeat me by your own? Who do you think you are? We'll see about this. And you know Maya can come down hard if you don't lock that door, keep her out. But when we're backed up by the Lord, who is Maya's boss, by the way, then we have a chance. Then we're humble enough to receive the grace of love and protection that the Lord provides. And I'm going to stop there tonight. I always feel He's given us so much to think on, to work on, to apply in our lives, and to see where we are on the spiritual path. And that's what we just got through reading on choosing our spiritual path. Our next section will be the importance of commitment. And sometimes before you make a commitment, you do need to be visual and observant and see where you are, how you're working with it, how it's working with you, and how you can use it to help yourself and help others. So, again, I'll ask any comments, any questions from anyone there, or
Kremlin just logged in and he said, I was listening, just wanted to say hello.
Oh, Kremlin, it's been a while. How are you? What did he say in there? What?
Just wanted to say hello, I was listening.
Oh, all right. Okay, you have any comments, questions, feelings, thoughts about what you heard if you were listening? Who else is there?
Bhuvan Mohan and Dr. Patrick.
Okay.
Kremlin says he's wonderful here.
He's wonderful? Good. Glad to hear it. I am too. Thank you for coming. Thank you for hearing. Thank you, Patrick, for being there. And you, Bhuvan Mohan, thank you so much. We must talk soon. Okay, any other comment, question from those of you that are there? Anybody planning to check in for a moment? Okay, whoever is out there, I thank you for being there. I hope these words and thoughts of His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami has helped, will help, and remember, how was that I was about to say, if you don't use it, you lose it. See if anything has, any one phrase, one sentence, one thought of what you've heard tonight that you can apply in your life and become more vigilant and mindful and grow spiritually, okay? That's what our desire and efforts here are endeavoring to do. So do have a wonderful week. I thank you for coming. And as I said, if there are any other comments you want to make, you can reach me at Mother Indrani 108 at gmail.com. Thank you for being there. Hare Krishna. All glories to Gurudev and Srila Prabhupada.